This is Rogue Wing, Coraline, or Helen RD over at Starship Modeler. Welcome to the workshop. Okay, got a very little bit of stuff done today. And it probably won't look like much, but added another layer of balsa to the bottom of the bridge superstructure because I didn't think it stood up from the deck well enough. This looks like where I'm probably going to go with that. This is for scaling the new elevator I've got to put in. This, some of you may recognize, is Changewind 1 from previous build. What I've got in my hand here is a printout of the 1/700th scale version. As you can see, she's quite large. I've also gone in and cut screens to put over my lift fans, again just to help with detail. These screens are the same sheetrock sanding screen I've been using for a while now. Ignore my son in the background. He's in the other room playing on a computer with his headphones in. He doesn't realize quite how loud he is. But I figure with the screening over the engines, over the lift fans rather, that'll help further the illusion. That, and realistically speaking, we don't want debris falling into the fan blades. At this point, I've got to decide what I want to do with the interior of the hangar and how I want to simulate the large bridge like we see in the Avengers movie. I've got a couple of ideas how I want to proceed with that. We'll play that by ear. Stay tuned. Okay, I admit I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Originally I was going to try to seal the balsa using a combination of white Elmer's glue and Testor's tube glue. The grain's still showing. So, resorted to Plan B. Plan B being Squadron white putty. The main reason I'm using the Squadron instead of using the Aves needs water in order to keep from sticking to my hands and everything else. Water and wood don't mix well together. So instead, I've got the putty down on one side of all of this. Once it's had a chance to cure, I'll do the other side, and I'll also finish working on the bridge island. And I'll do the other sides once this side's had a chance to cure up, and I've gotten a chance to sand on it. But that's where we're sitting. Okay, got the preliminary sanding done. As you can see, most of the wood grain has disappeared. So these are pretty much ready for greeblies. And of course for me to put the fans back in place. The bottoms have just been done with Elmer's glue. And for the bottoms, I don't think it's going to cause me too much problem. Now, bridge tower I've still got a lot of work to do on. I may see about just sanding some of what I've got here down and go from there. Mostly because a lot of it has been sealed already. But looking at this under the light, I know I've got to go through and like fill here, the back. We're getting there though. We're definitely getting there. Okay, continuing right along. I have the fans glued back into place. At this point, I just need to glue the screening over the fans. The bridge island feels a lot smoother than it looks. At this point, it's pretty much ready for some detail work. I got a little rough edge there to deal with. One way I'm avoiding clogging up my sandpaper while sanding this guy is I'm using that same screen I used on the Change Wind 1 build. Works nice. Clears the material quick, and at the same time, because of the holes in the mesh, doesn't clog up. Comes in really handy. Now, touch this up too while we're here. Alright. At this point, it's time to start, well, it's time to get the meshes over the fans. And then it'll be time to seriously start greebling. Is that even a word? Yeah, I guess, to add greeblies. Well, till next time. Okay, work continues. Right now though, what I'm working on, many of you will remember Change Wind 1 from previous builds. Well, that's arguably the premier aircraft in the Omega 7 fleet. Hence the reason why I'm working on the, since this is the Omega 7 Helicarrier, I need a 1/700th scale Change Wind 1. As I explained earlier, I printed out a scaled down version of the plane. At this point, I've started working on scratch building it with some sheet styrene. I've got the engines in place more or less, all the main engines, both top and bottom. Now I need to work on building up the contours, which I'll probably do with Abe's epoxy sculpt. I will also need, right about there, to put in one big honking elevator. Because she ain't going to fit on a regular elevator. Okay, back on slightly shaky cam for a minute. Went ahead, sorry for the extreme zoom, went ahead and using my new elevator as a template, cut an opening in the deck, mostly so I can put whatever mechanism is going to be in position to raise that elevator up. I also decided to deal with a serious gap in the hangar, namely the fact that there wasn't anything in the hangar. Ordinarily you would look through these side holes and see gaping emptiness. So what I've done is I've cut a good sized chunk of balsa and fitted it in to act as our new hangar deck. That way I can put some planes inside or whatever to help make it look more like a hangar than the gaping hole that it used to be. Stay tuned. Okay, been kind of a busy night. Alright, now do this the more or less easy way. Okay. Slowly but slowly, got the first batch of Aves on to build up the center section I still got to do the 2 engines that would go into this gap and this gap, but we are on the way. Got to let that cure up, and then I can go for the next phase. I also still need to do the same thing on the bottom, but that won't take anywhere near as much work because it doesn't have anywhere near as much detail and it won't be visible. But as you can see, it's starting to look like CW. See you soon. Okay, got to thinking last night. There's another major modification I really need to make to the Saratoga to make it look more like the Helicarrier we see in the movies. Namely, we need to make her look a little more like an airship and a little less like a seagoing vessel. To that end, using a combination of a razor saw and my Dremel, modified the front end line. As you can see, once I clean that up, that's going to give us a much more, if you will, aerodynamic look. We'll see how it goes from there. But just decided it needed something other than the typical bow you find on a seagoing vessel. Okay, after a whole lot of grinding and a little bit of sanding, that hole in the last update that I'd cut in the bow is now a solid piece. I like the new profile. Of course, I'll have to do some finer sanding. But at this point, that's much better as far as a Helicarrier look goes than the old sea bow. What I did was I took a piece of the yellow sign letters that I've been using forever, glued it into place along here and especially along the back with Gorilla Glue, because this plastic does not like most cements. Super glue will not hold this plastic, let's put it that way. But with enough Gorilla Glue in place and some heavy work with the grinder wheel and some sanding, we've got the hull patch in place. We have also got down here on the bench proper, side by side with the 1/700th scale cutout, the more or less complete rough, minus whatever I decide to use for landing gear, which at this point will probably be staples. I have a combination of balsa and Aves and plastic. I have change wind to 1 or Omega 7 towel. I'm very happy with how this has turned out, especially considering the size. It actually looks, it's close enough that it'll work. At this point, it's seriously time to start working on finishing up the hanger and detail. I still have all 6 hover fans to detail up. I'm still kind of working up in my head kind of the look I want to go for. But progress is being made.